Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Had a very busy day. Went out for volleyball this morning. Had to hop in here. I got to get everything loaded up. But we're over on the YouTube account, and I know there are a crazy amount of questions when it comes to who should we swap for our hero swap. I knew this is something that we'd have to sit down, we'd have to spend some time with because there are so many different options in there, and I'm sure that a lot of players are kind of wondering. So let's go ahead. Let's knock out some of these questions. Where's the Draconic faction? You're probably in Companions. If you are in Companions, you're not in the right version of AFK Arena. To actually swap the version that you are in, you can go to the settings, you can go to Companions. Now, unfortunately, as of right now, all of the players do start in Companions. I don't understand the logic behind starting in Companions when the classic version is the version that has been out for 6 years. And I don't know if it's going to continue to update the classic version, but I literally have players every single day that come in and ask and kind of wonder when it comes to the Companion server and how and why they start in the Companion server and where all the rest of the heroes are there. What's going on? Lith is here. Luis, Anthony, Tide, Papa. It looks like a couple others. So we want to go through and I want to answer your questions again with getting so many questions when it comes to the hero swap. What questions do you have? What are we really looking at going through again with this hero swap? And who are you swapping? I want to know, honestly, who are you guys swapping? I want to go in here. I want to make sure that we're maxing this out every day. We're in second right now, and you can see some of these. I hop in, I grab one of these mines. Most of the time, super competitive within this game mode, and a lot of times, nothing else is available. Eugene for Zora or Flora. So I got some questions, Marco, when we were talking about Eugene. Now, the reason in the video we did yesterday was specifically focused on and specifically talking about Eugene. Now, for me personally, as well as a majority of players, when you start looking at the utility in Eugene and what he brings to AFK Arena, is also remember that when you swap Eugene, right now Eugene is seeing a lot of gameplay, of course, in the Hypo Tower. Outside of the Hypo Tower, we're not seeing him used in a ton of different places. Even when we start going through the Cursed Realm, when we start going through the Nightmare Corridor, when we do start going through a lot of different game modes, there are not a lot of places right now that he is being used in the entirety. When we start again kind of looking through these formations, right there we do have Iran. Now, he is definitely one to note. Personally, and a lot of players, and this might be my own kind of speculation or kind of how I look at it, is when we start looking at the build between the Awakened version of Thoran and the Awakened version of Iran. I feel like the Awakened version of Thoran is a lot more of a niche hero than we're seeing with Iran. I feel like we're seeing a lot more utility out of Iran than we are still seeing from Thoran. Even though Thoran is used in quite a few formations, I feel like because of his design, because of his build, we might not see him a lot of different places. And I also feel like we might not see him for an extended amount of time when it comes to building out these. And of course, you can see Eugene not being used right now within this version of the Nightmare Corridor, or excuse me, the Cursed Realm. And then the same here. Eugene's not putting out enough burst damage. Even in here, we do have Baden, which is still kind of crazy. We have Thane that's in here. Now, this also has Thoran. Now, a lot of players, if you switch out Thoran, not having a huge effect, not even using the SP effect of Thoran right there. We have Scion in here. And again, Eugene not really being used in a lot of different places. And you can also build Eugene. You have to remember that, guys, is when it comes to building it out and when it comes to Eugene specifically, once you do get him to 5 stars, he is going to be out of the guild store. But if you do the swap, he is going to be back into the guild store itself. What's going on, Tonto? Doing well today. Like I said, we had a volleyball tournament, which was all morning long. Unfortunately, we couldn't do the morning stream. Knew it was going to be a little bit different. How's the new dragon looking on the test server? Right now, the new Draconic hero, of course, is being used. Looking at the build, looking at meta formations, probably going to be used in a couple different places. I'm going to do something a little bit later, a drink to go ahead and showcase what was in there. Should I get Lyca, Thoran, or Iran? Right now, out of those three, Lyca is higher on the tier list, but I do like Iran. Now, the thing with Lyca, now when we do look at Lyca in the entirety, Lyca is very unique with what she does. That is kind of one, Sofin is one of the things is Lyca might have a lot more utility outside of just a damage dealer because you have, the energy regeneration, you have the damage, you also do have the ability to, do some defensive to the front, the delay to come in formations. There's a lot of things that Lyca does outside of just being a straight damage dealer, like we see with the Awakened version of Iran, some of the crowd control in there, but I feel like that's the reason why Lyca is still seeing a little bit more utility-wise than we see now. Also remember, though, is when we start looking at all three of those, so Lyca, looking at Thoran, looking at Iran, the chances of being replaced by a power creep a lot sooner, probably going to be Thoran and Iran, where again, Lyca is kind of unique in what she does, but we could also see Lyca being very subject to power creep as well, which is going to be interesting. I gotta ask, the swap event is coming and I only have Awakened Chimera. Should I keep her or go for Athalia or Lyca? If you only have Chimera, I would probably go with Athalia. Now, if that is really the swap, because I know if we could get Envy, guys, Envy is really the newest one that is pretty broken as far as the swaps. But unfortunately, not being able to get Envy is, if you look at Athalia is still being used in a ton of content. But honestly, I mean, if you're thinking of Chimera, Chimera is still one of those, again, very unique heroes that only does what Chimera does, keeping heroes alive. Chimera still a very, very high top SS tier priority. Athalia still a little bit higher, but again, where the Awakened version of Chimera is not going to be as subject to the power creep, very similar to Lyca, which is going to keep them a little bit higher, where if a hero, and we have some really high damage heroes like Scion that came out, it could essentially replace these or remove some of the utility that we have with some of the heroes, just for the simple fact that it is the power creep. Wonder if Wukong would be good to swap with Knox since Wukong is 5 stars. Yes. If you look, and again, if you're not sitting and if you're not looking to go in and swap the Awakened heroes, the next would be your Celestials and your Hypos right here, would be the next swap. So thinking again, bigger picture, Liberta still probably one of the absolute highest utilities that we have. But when you start looking at Knox, when you start looking at Lavatoon, when you start looking at Aurelia, when you start looking at Liberta, or excuse me, Lucilla, they are some of the absolute priorities. So honestly, when we start breaking it down, I want to kind of break it down kind of faction by faction. So looking in here, so again, thinking of just the Celestial heroes, Liberta, number one, this is absolutely a big, big, big priority. Out of Liberta, I would probably go with Aurelia. Now, the thing to note is if you're building Aurelia, so if you are going in here, if you are building Aurelia, Aurelia has to have a plus 40 signature item. That is a requirement for her to perform like she needs to, has to have a plus 40 signature item. Literally, the difference between a plus 30 signature item to a plus 40 signature item is night and day with this hero. There are a few specifically, in addition to the Awakened version of Thoran is another one that absolutely has to have that plus 40 signature item. When you look at Thoran, absolutely, again, has to have that 40. But even in here, outside of those few, again, thinking of Liberta, thinking of Demia, thinking of Aurelia, the rest of these not seeing a ton of utility in formations. And of course, this one not eligible for the swap because of 2025 heroes. So again, those three top. Now, when we swap over and look at the hypos in here, two really big ones, Knox, Lavatoon, absolutely. Lucilla, I would even probably... Lucilla needs Liberta. In a majority of formations that we see, Liberta is being run with Lucilla as kind of the counterpart. I would probably build Lavatoon or Knox before I would build out Lucilla. And ultimately, after probably my third place would definitely be Lucilla. But then when we start looking at like Aziz and Frampton, everybody else in here, not really worth the build. We go right back into it being not worth the building out even this top row. Matria really doesn't have a place at all short of the tower. Eugene, again, another one, not really a place outside of the tower. And then like we said earlier with Envy, super, super broken within those game modes. Definitely going to have a lot of utility. I have a question. Should I get Thoran for the swap? I have all the meta awakened except for Lucius, Gavin, Zora, Iran. And of course, Thoran, my main focus is Treasure Scramble. Yeah, if it is Treasure Scramble, This is another one which I think maybe it was done, maybe the treasure scramble. So we ended at rank 55, which was awesome. But looking at our ranking and looking where players are going into some of these, Envy absolutely being used, but Lucius is really big within the treasure scramble. So is Iran. So we see the combination of Iran in concession or running with Alna in here. Here is Skyland down here. There is Zora. Now, Zora's utility is another one, super high utility with Zora, but there is Thoran as well. Now, if you do not have Thoran, there are a few other cheeses. A lot of people were using the original version of Thoran. Some were also using Tailene within this, because if you are treasure scrambled, this is just a stall team. That is exactly the only thing this team is doing. It is a stall team to allow the seal to do damage. So when you think about building up the awakened version of Thoran, just to use in the stall team, it might not be worth it for treasure scramble. I would rather have an Iran that is going to have a lot more utility in a bunch of different places, or even having a Zora, again, because she is going to have a lot of utility in a lot of different game modes, which would definitely work. The only swap option I have is Lucius, which I merc every week, Awaken, Thoran, or Gavis. Out of those, I would probably say Gavis. And again, Gavis is unique in what he does. Gavis is not going to be your damage dealer, but Gavis is going to be one that has a significant amount of utility in here, just for the simple fact that he plays a very, very heavy support role in here, which works. I'm torn between swapping Eugene or Entendre for Iran. I would swap Eugene. Beleth, I would absolutely swap Eugene. And guys, Eugene, again, not having a ton of utility with Eugene is after you do the swap, buy the copies of Eugene. It is the exact same thing that I did with Wukong. We swapped Wukong, and when we did, I believe Wukong's already at 1 star again. Guys, building these up, these Wukong, Flora, and of course, if you're looking at a hero like Eugene or Hildwyn, they are going to be ones that you are going to build in the entirety that you do want to swap. I'm swapping my Awakened Tailene for Thoran. Soul, that is awesome. What is a good build for Alna? So for Alna, a 209 is all that Alna needs. When we look at Alna, the only big and the huge thing with Alna, guys, is the furniture. She has to have this Winter's Call on an additional frontline hero. This is the cheat death that she possesses. So Lucy, you have to have the 9 of 9 furniture. Plus 20 signature items, really all that you need. Absolutely have to have the 9 of 9 furniture. It is a must. If I only have Zora built, should I swap her for Aurelia? I would. Aurelia is broken. Tide, when you look at every game mode, there is not a game mode, including campaign formations, including Temporal Rift, including pretty much everything. Aurelia is going to be incredibly well. Yeah, Aurelia, not only the plus 40 signature item, thank you, Lith, needs a very high erosion collection. Now, you want to get this as high as possible when it comes to erosion, making sure erosion, full erosion, trying to get and putting a collection on here. They are driven by erosion, one of the very unique ones, very similar to Amisha that requires a super high defense to be effective. Aurelia requires that erosion. What is the cheapest disease will work? Just having the hero. If you're talking about the Awaken one, the very, very basic Awaken one will work at Legendary. If you're talking about the old school one, all of the skills and abilities will be unlocked with levels. Don't really have to require it that much. If I switch servers to play the game from a starting point, would I be able to return? Yeah, you can always swap back. So yeah, guys, again, if you go to Companions, a lot of players don't want to go to Companions because they're afraid they're going to lose their classic progression. Even looking here, swapping between like the free-to-play account, the YouTube account, you can swap back and forth between any of the accounts at any time, including going back and forth to the Companion server. So know that it is going to be safe in there. I have Shamira, Aurelia, Lyca, and Belinda. I want to swap Belinda for Lucius, have a great collection to keep for the Lightbearer Tower. Yeah, I mean, that would be good. Now, Belinda still does have a significant amount of utility. Even outside of the tower, we are still seeing Belinda. And if you looked at the Curse Realm we literally just looked at, Belinda still does have the ability. Now, of course, thinking of that, Nick, is if you swap to Lucius, my thought with that is if you do the swap, is make sure that you can merc a Belinda. there's going to be a one or two kind of one-off places that you could go in there that you could build out, or you could borrow the copies that you need of a few heroes like Belinda, where if there's literally just one single spot that you need to get it, you could definitely do it. Is the new Celestial Awaken worth swapping? The new Celestial, oh, for Zora? Yeah, you could. You could definitely swap it for Mythic Aziz. I would swap Aziz all day long in its entirety. Yeah, the new, if you're talking about the new Celestial as in the Awakened as Zora, yes, you can. Hi, Dennis. What's going on, Mahadid? What is going on? Yes, my name is Dennis, if you're unaware, or if you haven't caught the other channel. Yeah, if you don't do the swap, you will get the 10,000 diamonds. Yeah, if you don't use the swap, yes, they're giving you that 10,000 diamonds. What do you think about Lyca? Is she not dealing significant damage to the boss compared to Envy? Awaken Lyca, like I said, the big thing with Lyca, I would keep her because she does things outside of just the damage. That is the big thing. That is really the big thing. Is she has a lot of utility outside of being just like a primary or secondary damage dealer, just because of the way that she works. Should I swap my 1-star engraved Lucy for someone else, and who? I have Demia, Alna, Liberta. I would go in there. I mean, if you have her built out, I would build out Aurelia or Liberta. You have Liberta, yeah, I would do Aurelia. Aurelia would be, I know that, yeah, 10,000 in there. What are the requirements for Knox? Knox, you only have to do the 30, I believe it's 30960, and I believe this is PvP. Offsets fatal damage. The activated double trouble skill will be triggered immediately. I would have to look to see the exact build on Knox, but I know a 30 is required, a 40 is recommended. But again, like Aurelia, 100% recommended. You have to have a 40. I chose between Knox and between Lavatune, and we did the 40 on Knox first, and then we actually did Lavatune. If I'm stuck in the campaign progression, should I get Iran, Thoran, or Lyca? I would do Iran. I would do Iran because, and again, Thoran, Lucy, or Iran, or Lucretia. So when we stack them, and I know, again, this is kind of one of the more complicated ones, Christopher, is when you look at Lucius, he requires a very, very big build. Now, plus 40 signature item, and again, kind of systematically breaking them down. Thoran requires a plus 40 signature item. Lucius requires a plus 40 signature item. Iran benefits from a plus 40, but for Iran, it is not a 100% absolute have to have if you didn't have the ability to build it out really quick. Out of those three, I do like Iran for the crowd control aspect he brings. Also, being a newer awakened hero means not as much power creep because of the damage dealer, but not only the damage that he puts out, but he also puts out a considerable amount of crowd control, which is the way to think about it. Think about first generation of Awaken. Who do you think still worth the swap? Honestly, no one's being used. When you look, I mean, Thane, which crazy enough, Thane is still being used in a couple niche formations. But then when we get into Brutus not being used, when you look at Solise, again, maybe a niche one-offer not being used. And then looking at here with Baden, again, not being used within formations. There are a lot of places not being used at all. What is going on, Bobo? If I have a chance to swap an Awaken Hypo for an Awaken Iran, you can swap Awaken to Awaken. Yeah, you can swap Awaken to Awaken, Celestial and Hypo to Celestial and Hypo, and then the regular 4 faction to those. When will the swap happen? Should be up on Tuesday. It should be up. I finished my Dragon Gwen. 50, 36, 100 for the win. Bobo has the absolute max out biggest Gwen that you can get within there, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, again, out of those 3, Chris, I do recommend, I like Iran. I do like Iran out of there. Thoran, Zora, or Lucius. Zora. Iron Knight, I would do Zora out of there. If I have Belinda, Baden, Antandra, Shamira, Zora, Eugene, I'm thinking about swapping Baden to Athalia. Yeah, I would. I mean, you have to think, because you're not going to have Baden anymore, which could affect the tower progression, but overall you gain Athalia. So that's the thing you have to remember, guys, is if you start thinking about the tower progression, where if you're swapping, like an Antandra, if you're swapping some of these heroes away from a faction where you're struggling with the towers already, it's going to be, it's going to be hard in there. Can I get away with having Awakened Thoran at 1 copy for the SEAL team? You're missing all of his abilities, Nick. That's the problem, where if you're building out a hero like Thoran, the plus 40 absolutely for the Storm State has to be done. But if you're just using this at Legendary, I would recommend Taylene. I would recommend the original version of Thoran. 1 copy is not going to be enough at all. Yeah, you could use a lot of the digital ones. Swap is happening Tuesday. Should be Tuesday. Should I swap Awakened Thane for Athalia? You can, and yes, I do like the swap of Thane for Athalia, but again, also remember, Thane is being used in some niche places, and overall with Thane is Lightbearer Tower might be a little bit more difficult. And look at that, guys. Big shout out to Tommy being a member and supporting the channel for 14 months in the entirety. Thank you, Tommy, for being a member. And I want to see how close we are. I know we're getting pretty close to that 40,000. We are 38. We are 38 subscribers away from being at our 40,000 subscriber mark, which is kind of crazy that it is 40,000. Now, of course, oh, whys and ones, we got all of the questions right in the Poetic Pop quiz like we have ever since the release, which is a big one. Who should I swap, Lucretia for Aurelia or Brutus for Iran and Lucius? You could do, yeah, I mean, you could do Aurelia, you could do Iran or Lucius, any of those. Again, knowing Lucretia is not being used, knowing Brutus is not being used, either of those would work incredibly well between both of those. Aurelia is a primary hero. When you start thinking of what heroes do you need to build, Liberta and Aurelia are huge. Guys, they do require, again, a larger build out, but Liberta and Aurelia are very, very huge, especially if you're not building out Lucretia or don't need Lucretia. And look at that, Duck, Drake, Duck. Thank you for subbing, guys. That is 1 sub closer to our goal of those last 48 we need. Brutus for Iran or Lucius. Again, I like Iran out of the combination. Lucius requires a very, very big build, but both of those have a lot of utility. You're going to use them in a bunch of different places. I know I'm a bit late, but I'm currently building Chimera via shards and still working on Zora via the Temple of Time. Yeah, I mean, if you even swap a little to Zora and then continue building out Chimera, even here within the event we have right now, we are still waiting and building this out with shards as well. So you're in the same boat as I am with Chimera, that is building it out for shards. If you think of building it out with shards in here, though, Raphael, you're talking, I mean, so many more star zones. I can't even mathematically think about that because you need 3 copies for every swap. We're not even going to full one with an iteration of the Mystic Star Zone. You're talking years if you're building them out via shards. That's going to be a crazy, crazy amount of time to actually build them out in the entirety. I can't even imagine. I'm using my shards right here again with Chimera to get the additional copies to actually go in here. And I think we have 1 right here. We have 1 right here to get those additional copies to add stars to Chimera. But building them out in the entirety is going to take a crazy, crazy amount of time. I have 1 copy of Entendre, Iran, Thoran, Zora. I have the rest of the heroes at 1 star. So if you have 1 copy, again, I like Iran. I like Zora out of there would probably be my biggest one. Zora and Iran, you really couldn't go wrong because both of those, again, a lot of utility for both of those. Only Awakened heroes I don't have are Awakened Thane, Entendre, Maitreya. I wouldn't get any of them. I mean, Thane, if you can borrow him, doesn't really make a big difference. But looking at Entendre, thinking of Maitreya, neither of those I would really swap to. Maybe Entendre if you're struggling with the tower. Maitreya not being used has been entirely replaced kind of by Envy. And then the Awakened version of Thane is so old, I really wouldn't worry about building that either with the swap. Awakened Solise for Awakened Iran. Yeah, Darren has it spot on. Again, you have a hero that has a lot of utility like Iran. You have a hero who has a lot less utility and is falling down the tier list like Solise. Makes sense. Makes sense to swap them in the entirety. What would you grind if I have nothing to do? Honestly, the way that I grind, and I do it systematically, never ever, as I go through campaign progression, this is the grind of all grinds because you have to win so many stages. Once we kind of get stuck here, then I hop over to the towers. If you're completely maxed out into everything in its entirety, go check out Raid. Raid I've been playing. I did a stream last night. It was a ton of fun. But honestly, I go in here, I do my dailies, I go through the different parts of AFK Arena. It gets to the point where we do the events, we make sure everything's set, make sure everything's good. And look at that, guys, a double pull right there. Very cool. But overall, when everything's done, it's done. I can go through here, you know, I play it on my computer, I play it on BlueStacks. I can go through here, I can farm a lot of content automatically while I'm playing other games. So I do play multiple games at the same time. I've actually done it for years, multitasking. Even sometimes I'll do an AFK Arena and I'll do a Companions, or I'll do a test server and a regular one running 2 instances of BlueStacks. We run it through all the time. Is it better to go 5-star Wukong for Knox or Mythic Eugene for Awaken? I would go for Knox. Guys, Knox is going to make a really big difference. If you're swapping a Wukong for a Knox, especially if you don't have any copies or if you don't have Knox built at all, Knox has a lot of utility in PvP, has a lot of utility. Wait, why Zora over Awakened Thoran? So the reason is when we look at it, Blue, the Zora is being used in pretty much every formation that we have. So thinking utility wise, when we start looking at Zora, Zora is being worked and is worked into a lot of different teams and a lot of different content. A lot of times it's not going to be as a primary damage dealer. Most of the time it is going to be as a secondary damage dealer within formations. But we're seeing Zora, even right here is Thoran. There is Zora right there. Zora's utility is being used in pretty much every single game mode. Even when we start getting treasure scramble to the earlier teams, Zora is being used in the earlier teams. Now, of course, Zora for a lot of places is not being used as a primary damage dealer, but Zora is being used again in a lot of different teams for the skills and abilities she possesses utility-wise. Again, we're seeing her in a bunch of different places. As much as I like Thoran, there's a lot of places where he's run, and I feel like it's kind of niche, and especially the SEAL team. So a lot of players are the only place that we are seeing Thoran is being used in the SEAL team within the treasure scramble itself. Now with that, Thoran is easy to replace within the treasure scramble. So again, if you're thinking again, bigger picture, when you look at some of the teams in here, when you look at Thoran being run even right here, if you have Taylene, you can swap out Thoran. If you have the original version of Thoran, you can swap out Thoran. There are a lot of variations that you can swap within this formation. And even here, start a battle, all Greyborn heroes maximum health is increased. There's no more Greyborn heroes. There's not any Greyborn heroes in this formation. So even though we're running the SP effect in here, there are no Greyborn heroes within there, which again, I don't think it affects the enemy, but overall, we're not running the Greyborn. This is just a stall team to have the SEAL do what the SEAL does best. Easily replaced within the treasure scramble if you didn't have Thoran. And then again, other formations. And also, who can you merc? Who are you merking? Who can you use? I always focus on this. Even looking here, we do have a couple heroes. You know, I have merked these heroes since I'm not building them. Even big shout out to Lith for letting us borrow the hero. But looking at Skyland, looking at Halia, these are 2 Draconic heroes that I am not going to build at all. I will not, and I am not going to build them. I don't have the insignias. I don't have anything to build them out. I will not build them at all, meaning I do have to merc the heroes because I have no other option short of merking them or short of picking them up like we have them right there, because there's no other place to get them short of merking. So again, remember, when you're looking, and if you swap a hero that you think you might need, borrow a copy. When we start looking at heroes like right here with the Awakened version of Belinda, this is 100% a hero that you can probably borrow from a ton of different players that have built her. If you only need her for 1 or 2 formations, there's not a big reason to use her in a bunch of different places or to build her up to any high level, because you have the ability to merc her, you have the ability to pick her up in a bunch of different game modes. Makes it incredibly easy versus having to build them or buy them in their entirety. Should I swap Eugene, Brutus, or Baden for Zora or Iran? Again, I would swap Eugene. Guys, I really, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. And again, I don't know who I'm going to swap for because we have them built, but I might even swap Eugene just because on my account, like I said, we have a lot of them built. is I might swap Eugene being 5 stars for another hero that is a primary damage dealer, like let's say Iran, just to pull Iran and get Iran up to 5 stars in the entirety. So swapping almost 1 for 1 and then building them up. So I know the signature item is going to make a big difference, and we don't have the signature item built up to a 40 here, but I feel like both of these together would make a really big difference, being able to bring 5 stars to Iran, and then, like I said earlier, going back into the store and building up Eugene through here. So this is going to be my big priority, is once we go through and once he is added back into the guild store, we're going to do the exact same. We're going to continue building them up and making sure that we can do the swap again and again and again as we're going through. It's definitely there. Let me try to catch up on some of these questions. I know we've had a ton of questions out of here. Should I swap on Tundra or Baden for the Awaken? I am missing in who? I'm missing Thoran. Looks like Thoran, Lucius, Zora. I would go for Zora. I would probably keep Antandra just for the simple fact it's Antandra. Baden, I would swap for Zora. I do that. That would be absolutely one that I would do. Is Skylin good? Skylin is good, but Skylin, I think and I feel that Skylin might be replaced. He is kind of crazy, but super, super expensive. We got lucky with some of those double Skylin copies. We still do not have Halia, but overall, looking at the cost of building the Draconic heroes, it is still just insane, absolutely insane expensive. Skylin is good because he puts out a ton of damage really fast. That's really it. Should I swap my Taylene for Eugene or Eugene for Zora? You could do Taylene, Justin, for Zora, just for the simple fact, again, Taylene, we know short of the tower is not going to be used, and Zora would be used in that case. Gavis, Thoran, or Iran. And again, I would probably go with a little bit more of the damage dealer. Zora would be my first choice, probably followed by Iran. Eugene is 1 star. I would swap Eugene then. I would absolutely go in there. Should I swap my Mystic Zorath for 1 star Lucretia for Lucilla or Demia? Yeah, absolutely. Again, think bigger picture, guys. When we think about the swap, this event will start, and it should be 2 more days before the swap. Can you swap non-awaken to awaken? No, you cannot. Yeah, should be 2 more days. Red Clover, should I swap my Solise for any more relevant or Lucretia for Knox? I would probably do Solise. The awakened version of Solise, again, utility-wise, is constantly and consistently going down. Even thinking of the newer support heroes that we're getting within AFK Arena, they're replacing a lot of the older, looking at Solise, looking at the awakened version of Sophia, a lot of the new support heroes are replacing these in the entirety, which is kind of interesting to see. Would you still swap Eugene even if Awakened Brutus is not anywhere else except the tower? You could. As free to play, guys, if you're not using, or if you have someone like the Awakened version of Brutus, this again is another one that you can swap, but you do have to know there could be a pretty big impact if you're free to play, which you are, but going in there, if you do this swap, chances are you could struggle with the tower. You might be stuck in the Mauler tower for a considerable amount of time. So make sure, Brutus carries the tower, and Brutus carries a lot of the tower, where again, if you're swapping Eugene, this is going to be one, when you do the swap, you can build him up again. That's it. Can Awaken Taylene be swapped for Awaken Athalia? Yes, absolutely, Tommy. That can be swapped. Should I swap Belinda for Zora or Iran, which is better? I like Belinda for Zora, but again, Peter or Patar, you have to remember Belinda is still being used in quite a few places. When you think of very big burst damage, Belinda can do out and really do a ton of burst damage. When does the birthday event? 6th anniversary. Should be Tuesday. Tomorrow we should see our patch notes up on the global servers, and then Tuesday with the patch, with the events, with everything else, should be there in its entirety. Yeah, just what Caro said. Swapping a hero you can build with guild coins is a pretty huge return on value. Yes, you'll get to a point, guys, where guild coins come in faster than essentially you're going through them. So even here, you can see we have 99k guild coins. This has 5 more days. Eugene is already gone out of here. I have almost 600 time emblems. Not a huge priority to build these, so I've been picking up and getting a couple copies of Hildwyn. Once I get Hildebrand to 5 stars, I'm going to be down to just these two. But again, if you think of just swapping Eugene, which is a hero short of the Hypo Tower, not seeing a lot of utility in different game modes, swapping Eugene to someone else isn't going to have quite the effect of the tower. Now, also, and this is kind of my point, is if you're going in and you're building out, and I really, really do recommend building out Envy. So Envy is going to replace a lot of the places where Eugene was being used within the tower. Just for the simple fact, again, you might have more of a basic copy of Eugene. You can build them up in time, but Envy, because of the nature, and Envy is one of the absolute top SSS tier heroes. Envy being built will push you through a lot of the tower, knowing that you have a very strong hypo carry. The rest of it can work, especially, I know a lot of players still use Mahira. Mahira fundamentally, even at a basic version, works incredibly well going through with the Mesmerize effect. So the ultimate rate here does work incredibly well. Regardless of the level, she still does work when you start getting to 2 teams within the Hypo Tower. That's why I said, even from the beginning, guys, Eugene is really, really worth the swap because you can build him again. That is one of the big things. I have Legendary plus Awakened Taylene, almost Mythic. Should I summon her to 1 star and swap, or swap my Eugene? And should I get Thoran or Iran? Again, Thoran and Iran, it's kind of either or. Personally, I like Iran. I like, and I do use Iran a lot more than I do use Thoran. Thoran can be replaced in the Treasure Scramble, which means 1 or 2 formations. If you needed to borrow either one, you probably could, but you'd have one already built in there. Brutus 1 star, who should I swap for? If you have Brutus 1 star, swapping for Knox, you have to do the Awaken. If you're Mario, if you're talking about the Awaken version of Brutus, that has to go Awaken to Awaken. You can't go Awaken to a regular Celestial or a Hypo. If I were to swap Belinda, who could I swap her with? Replacing a high damage dealer like Zora is kind of secondary damage dealer. If you were looking at high damage like an Iran, Iran does a considerable amount of damage. Just thinking about damage, if you have a Thalia, which most players do, Iran is another one that does a significant amount of damage. Crowd control, again, utility-wise, Thoran is being used. Iran, Shamira, even thinking of like a Zora or a Gavis, those are kind of the top tier outside of a Thalia like an Envy. They are kind of the top tier where you're swapping, you know, the first season or the first iteration or the second iteration to get them a little bit higher. Do I think Iran or Zora? I like Zora. Red Clover, I do like Zora. Liberta is a top priority. Yes, absolutely. Probably off topic, is Envy's signature item a level 40 priority? So when it comes to Envy, yes. So the plus 40 signature item with Envy right here marks the corruption deal, increases explosion damage to the marked enemies. When you look at Envy, it is not just 100% about doing this 100% more explosion damage. It is also about the damage. When you look at Envy, going from a plus 30 signature item to a plus 40, you are adding a ton of attack. You are also adding physical pierce and crit. The combination of those 3 will drive Envy's damage through the roof. Then you put in the multiplication factor of support heroes to buff him up even higher. That is the why Envy is doing a crazy, crazy amount of damage. 100% more damage to explosion makes a big difference when you're amping all of the stats that he has, because then when you start looking through here, you know, physical pierce 8%, 28 or 16% crit damage amplification makes a big difference when you start adding in stats on top of stats. Physical pierce 38.4. 1 point to physical pierce is 1%, meaning he is doing 38% more damage just because of the physical pierce that he possesses. And even in the engraving, we did build out the engraving all the way to 68, and we're putting more furniture on him as well to go in there. Now, Zora or Gavis, I would go Zora. I would definitely go Zora in there. Swap Eugene for Thoran, Zora, or Iran. Again, I like Zora in the combination, Steven, but overall, if you did Zora, Thoran, Iran, either of those, any of those would do incredibly well. Envy struggles to survive in the tower, sometimes depends on the enemy team. Yeah, Muchi, and that is swapping it up a little bit. So a lot of times, if you're having survival issues with a hero, such as Envy within the tower itself, you can go in here and a lot of players will swap them backline. allowing or essentially sacrificing a lot of the front line. Even right there is Eugene. This is probably an older formation. I don't like that they don't timestamp these when they were going through here, or when players were going in here and building these out. Because right there's Envy. You can see Eugene kind of takes a back seat or a secondary in there. But when you start having issues with some of the survivability, you have the ability, and a lot of players will run back line. So again, front line, if he's having survivability issues, you can swap him to a back line, which he'll go front line anyways. But the initial damage goes on Aziz versus going on Envy, again, giving him a little bit more of the survivability. No, you cannot swap. Anyone released in 2025, you cannot swap. So you are kind of stuck to them. You cannot. What's going on, Shooty? Thanks for joining us. I'm going for both Curse Realm, Treasure Scramble, been constantly around 13 to 16, slowly creeping on Treasure Scramble. Yeah, if you can get 80 or 90, which is good in the Treasure Scramble, that is a pretty darn good push. Who should be the first Awaken you build if you just unlock the Temple of Time for the fastest progression? Are you going with Graveborn? So that's an interesting. So if you're going for the fastest possible progression, Ryzen, most players have said if you're early game, like you are, fastest progression will be Chimera because of Chimera's SP effect. Now, of course, tier list wise, Chimera's still in that SS tier. But when you look at this ability to keep other heroes alive, that's the reason why most players say that if you're going for faster progression, it is going to be Chimera that you want to get out first. Because again, if you're going for fast progression, building out Ivan, also building out Envy, or excuse me, not Envy, but building out Randy gives you the three Graveborn buff early as you're going through there. How high do I build an SI 40 with red chest? So you do 32 through 38 is with red chest. So typically the way you want to build it, and I'll show you real quick. So when you build out all of your heroes, when you're going to that plus 40, what you want to do is when you use your epic chest, so if you're at a 30, this is going to take you to 31, and then you're 30, 39 and 40. So getting those, the first level when it goes to over 30, and then the final two levels are the only ones you're going to use epic emblem chests. So when you look at 32 through 38 is going to be red chests and what you want to do with them. That's the way that you want to build it up. Yeah, 31 to 37 with the red chest. So 38, 39, 40. The two levels, the two highest levels you want to use those epics. That is how mathematically they have broken it out to logically make the most sense. To go through there and again, kind of mathematically make the most sense in those game modes. That is the way that you build them out to have the most efficiency. Now, of course, when it comes to the epic chests, so many players are just struggling with getting them, including myself. If I go through and I build one hero, I might have enough to get one hero to 40. I've really just been sitting on a ton of them. I've been saving them to see exactly what it looks like and who's coming down the pipeline with all of these. How high is the chance to get at least one Awakened hero from 150 common Mythic Star Zone chests? If you have the Star Zone chests, I forget what the conversion is. If anyone's on it that can do the math for that, what hero can I put in formation with Zora? She runs with a lot of, if you look in the actual formations, she is run in a lot of different team comps, and she is run in a very big variation in team comps, almost as a damage dealer in some comps, Justin. And then some of the comps, she is actually run as a support. So almost as like a crowd control support hero. And we have these last two giving me Dragon Pagona 110 in there. Now we know that the new hero is coming pretty soon. These were at 46. I'm saving them. So we have 110, 111 here. But yeah, there's a few different formations for Zora that is used, including, again, a couple formations that are built around other heroes that she plays kind of like the sub damage or the crowd control in there. I've got my Eugene at 1 star finally, got a copy of Iran. All I need is anniversary. Yeah, a couple more days, Dale, and you will absolutely be there. I don't need a Belinda, so I think swap to Envy. You can't swap for Envy, unfortunately. Yeah, that's kind of stuck in there. What's going on, Ronald? And I got 12 copies of Eugene once I swapped for him. Very nice. I have Awakened Disease 1-star missing Matria, Zora, Sophia, and Lucy. I would build Zora. I would build Zora. If you have Aziz, now way back when, Aziz I built out in the entirety. Aziz was actually the one that I swapped, I think 2 years ago. Might have been 2 years when we did swap the Awakened version of Aziz. I built him out in its entirety. Unfortunately, a hero that nobody actually ever used for anything, really. So it was kind of sad. Yeah, Zora is really good in there. Matria is old. Sophia is old. You could do Lucius. Again, when you look at Zora, Thoran, when you look at Lucius, when you look at Iran, all of those are in that same SS tier. So depending on what you need within your account can make a little bit of a difference who you want to swap to. And also, again, there's no hard and kind of tried and true, this is who you're swapping for, you know, this specific. And there we go, guys, another copy. Amira. And I believe in here we only have 2. I think we have 2, maybe 3 that we do not have 5 stars with our regular faction heroes. I think we're pretty well capped. A lot of this food I'm just going to have to go ahead and recycle as we continue. I want to make sure that we get some of the quests knocked out in here. Heard that the upcoming dimensional crossover is about to be Delicious Dungeon. Never heard of that in its entirety. Yeah, haven't heard anything about the crossover. We know there was a crossover. I believe that is coming to Journey. I believe Journey is getting a crossover, and Journey is getting the release of Dimensional Heroes. If you've seen with the crossover, what's going over on Journey, they released the Dimensional faction over on Journey, and then some of those are going to be going over there. Baden for Zora and Solise for Zora, which is better? Honestly, Baden for Zora or Solise for Zora, I would probably do Baden. I mean, short of not being able to make as much progression when you're going through the Graveborn Tower, the Awakened version of Baden, I don't use them at all right now, Philip. I don't know if there's any place really that you're using him. But honestly, I use Solise in the tower for the healing factor, some of the support, and Solise is super effective within the Temporal Rift as well. Yeah, definitely could be a big use in there. What is the best Awakened hero aside Chimera and Athalia for the campaign? I like Lyca. A lot of the campaign formations do run Lyca in the formation, again, because of the delay, because of the energy recovery. So even looking at some of these formations, and again, don't know how old these are when it comes to formations itself. There is Chimera that is being used for Randy. Belinda in campaign is being used. We still have Thoran in here, and then Envy. So this is a new one that is running Envy, and look at the level, guys. 789. 789. They are finishing out 6940 with a formation at 789. I'm going to go ahead and copy this one. But again, there's a couple ones that are very prevalent, and it almost seems like campaign formations that we run the same thing. When you think of chapter 65, 67, all the way to 69, where we're at now, a majority of the formations were the exact same formations through all of it, which is kind of crazy. I'm excited for the collaboration in AFK on May 1st. Or are you talking about the collaboration that's going over to Companions, or do you mean AFK Arena? Delicious Dungeon is on Netflix. It's kind of fun, but none of the characters stand out to me. I'm going to have to check it out. I'm going to have to note that one, Lith. Delicious Dungeon. I don't think I've ever heard of it, which would be kind of interesting. You're saying you got 150 of those blue chests from MSZ, wondering how likely you are to get one of the hero choice chests. Sorry to let you know, but if you have the fragment chest, if what you mean, or getting the hero choice chest, I still have gotten none. If that's what you're talking about, Dale, and I think that might have been the question, I still have seen 0, not 1. Every single Mystic Star Zone, I've gotten every single chest that was available within the Mystic Star Zone. We still have never seen another one. Are you able to swap for a Wukong for a different Celestial? Yes, Fate. You can swap. Again, you can swap Celestial or a Hypo for Celestial and Hypo. And you can do those. What's going on, Pator? Returning player, I have Lyca and Athalia. Should I swap my Taline for Chimera or one of the newer damage dealers? I would probably do Chimera. I like Chimera. Again, thinking of that SS tier. I I probably would. I do like Shamira. I like the utility of Shamira and where she's being used. It's really good. Isn't Baden used in the Curse Realm? Not anymore. Baden, unfortunately, has been replaced. When they rework some of the formations, I do not use that Awakened version of Baden anymore. Might see him kind of a one-off, but as it sits today, he might be super niche, again, kind of in a formation. But I also feel like within those formations, thinking again, another couple iterations, another couple weeks or months, probably going to be replaced in the entirety. I personally, and again, thinking of my account specifically, we do use and have all of the heroes built, including the new Celestial hero we just got. So my account having availability to everyone could make a little bit of a difference on who we're using in here, just because I have everyone built. And older players still might use Baden in the formation because they haven't changed it up. But overall, yes, there are a couple things in there. Last question, does 40960 with a collection with 3 mythic defense and 1 mythic full defense work for Lucius? 40960, yes. Collection with 3 mythic defense and 1 mythic full defense, yes, that would work. That would work, Nick. So you have to think about this. And the way to look at it, when you think of the Awakened version of Lucius, the bigger you build him, the better he's going to perform. That's it. The more defense you can stack on him. So even if you go, to a 40960, or you do a 65 or a 68, I believe I have mine built to a 72. Just for the simple fact, the bigger you build him, the better he's going to perform with in-game modes. If you want to see Lucius put out all of the damage that he can in a multitude of game modes, the bigger the build, the better he's going to. I haven't played since AFK or pre-beta of AFK Journey. Yeah, Journey, I found too much time. That's it. It really, really started taking a crazy amount of time sink. And I know right now, like I said on my second channel, we're playing Raid. Not putting a ton of time into Raid, which I know, and I believe Vulcan is playing Raid as well. But overall, not dedicating a ton of time, not pushing a crazy amount of progression in there. I want to play free to play, and just like we're doing here, as it sits right now on the YouTube account, we are completely free to play on this account. The exact same in Raid. We are doing completely free to play. We are not putting anything, not even $1, into any of the games right now, as it sits right now. I think I'm on the chart on 6940. Oh, are you in there? I'm on 6941. Yeah, stupid power cap. I don't have a power cap, and I go in here, and not a huge fan of pushing progression in the campaign because it is a massive, massive time sink in here. I still see Awakened Baden in the top leaderboard personally. Oh, I'd have to check. I wouldn't swap. I really don't think swapping Eugene is a good idea. He's useful now on some. By the time you rebuild him, he'll likely be way less useful. I just like that I can build him. And again, that's the reason why building Eugene, where if I swap for another hero, chances are, one, you're going to hurt your progression within the towers. That's going to be a given for pretty much everyone that you're building. If you use Brutus, if you use, if you use a majority of heroes, you're going to be hurting your progression in a lot of towers. With the release of Envy, you're replacing a lot of the place within the tower where essentially Eugene was being used, where Envy is swapping some of them. And again, thinking of the next 3 to 6 months, really, is the Awakened version of Baden could be used in a couple different places. Towers, absolutely going to be used. But when you do the swap, it's a first generation hero that's being swapped. Again, going to be replaced. Guys, we're dropping heroes in AFK Arena every 2 weeks, like clockwork. And even now, a lot of times, we're dropping multiple heroes. And there we go, guys. Thoran gets this one done. But we're always having heroes. We're always having new heroes, new updated heroes. We still have 4. That is right. 4 more core primary 4 factions that are going to have Awakened heroes this year, which means, again, looking at Baden, thinking of some of the older ones, could be replaced in the entirety for the simple fact that they are now, 4 years old on the Awakened list, and we're going to continue to get more Awakened heroes in the entirety. Who's the best swap for Solise if I Awakened Athalia and Awakened Belinda? Who would I make the most progression? Again, Lyca is in there. Iran is in there. You have a couple choices. Solage, that you could swap. You have Athalia, you have Belinda. Again, so you have light bearers, you have your celestials. You could go in there and you could swap for Lyca. That would be a good choice. You could swap for Iran. You could do Lucius, but you already have Belinda, so I wouldn't do Lucius. Again, thinking of the towers itself. Yeah, there's a couple in there. I only need 5 more copy of Land of 1 star. I'm so close. Fate, I feel your pain. It took me, and I believe it was 240, maybe 260 of the copies in there. I left AFK Arena when they added pets. I'm too far behind to play now. I was level 690. I had all the Awakened Heroes max. You could. I mean, you could come. You'll get a lot of rewards when it comes back, serious. You'll get a lot of rewards for coming back to AFK Arena, which might be worth it just to check them out. Because, again, you could hop in. You could do a swap to a newer hero. You could go ahead and kind of make that work. Is it worth swapping Awakened Solise for another Awakened? If yes, for who? Yeah, depends who you have. Dark-Hearted Knight, if you only have Solise, I would do Athalia. Awakened version of Athalia is still one that is very, very broken, which I love. I see records with Awakened Brutus in the tower, 1 copy. Yeah, huge, and they always will be. So guys, when we start thinking, oh, did we finish that stage? Yeah, we got through that stage. So when you look at the towers, and this is again, this is going to be adjusted. Now remember, so breaking this down systematically within the towers, I know we have a few minutes left, but looking at the Tower of Light, when you think of your specific pool of heroes that we have for the Tower of Light, you're going to have 3 Awakened heroes, and we have 3 teams. So we can see we have Thane right here. One of these we probably have Belinda. One of these we probably have Lucius. Because we have 3 Awakened heroes, we have 3 teams. If you swap one of these heroes, it can create a very big void for progression within the tower itself. We said this at the beginning, and I will reiterate it again. It will create a void within the tower if you are swapping them because you have all 3 floors. So the same, when you look at some of these formations, every single one of these are going to have your Awakened heroes. I wouldn't be shocked. So in here, there we go. There's Brutus. Second team, probably going to have Entendre. Third team, probably Sophia, which is right there. 3 Awakened heroes, 3 teams that we're looking at. The Awakened heroes, when you look at the regular 4 factions, are by far the strongest heroes we have in AFK Arena when you start breaking it into all 4 of the faction towers. So again, if you're swapping a Brutus, this is probably going to be a point where if you're swapping for Brutus, you might struggle in the tower itself. You might have a lot harder time and a lot more difficulty going through towers if you're swapping those formation heroes. Now, again, when we start thinking of the Infernal Fortress, this is a place where, again, if you're swapping Eugene, Eugene could be a really big part that you're missing in here. That is going to have you struggle if you don't have all of these built, or if you don't have a majority of these built, including having Matria. Because again, when we start thinking bigger picture, looking at how strong the Awakened heroes are, when you look at Envy, when you look at, when you're looking at, what's her name? I'm drawing a blank on Matria. When you have Matria, when you have Eugene, when you have these heroes built, they are the strongest heroes within the faction tower. If you are swapping a Eugene, chances are, if you don't have Envy built, it's going to be incredibly, incredibly hard to go in there. Yep, and that's it. So just like what you said, Zale. So if you swap Brutus, you don't have Entendre. Now that leaves Sophia in there. That is going to hurt your tower progression, and it is going to hurt it quite a bit. Again, so that is the trade-off if you're doing the swap, and depending on what you're getting. So for instance, let's say you're swapping a Eugene for a Zora. So you go ahead, you swap Eugene, you swap for Zora, and then all of a sudden, you have a Zora, Celestial Tower is good. You have Athalia, you have Zora, you have Gavis. Let's say, you don't have Taylene. When you start looking at 2 teams, it's going to be incredibly, and it is easy to go through the tower because in this formation, we already have 4 Awakened heroes in the entirety. So if you're swapping it for Zora, and that's why I've said, like, if you're even looking at another tower, like let's say, for instance, you have Entendre or you have Brutus, you swap Brutus for Lucius. Good swap. You swap Brutus, you get Lucius. Now in the Lightbearer Tower, you have Belinda and you have Lucius all built out. All of a sudden, in the Mauler Tower, you don't have Entendre, you don't have Brutus. Good luck making progression in a majority of this. Either you're going to be way, way, way over leveled and really pushing progression that way because you're over leveled, or you're not going to be able to make progression at all within the tower because you swapped your most powerful hero within that specific tower away to another faction. That again, that is kind of the really tough part. And then big picture, you have to think, what is going to be the impact of the swap when you're looking at different game modes? So again, if you're going and swapping from, let's just say, for instance, we were using Brutus. So let's say in here, you swap Brutus and you swap Brutus for the awakened version of Iran. All of a sudden, within the Cursed Realm, you're doing very well. You have Iran in here. You're kicking butt within this tower. All of a sudden, again, Mauler Tower, you can't make any progression because you no longer have Brutus, who is a really, really solid carry in there. Or you swap for another one in here. Like I said, looking at Belinda still being used. A lot of players said, is it safe to swap Belinda? Belinda is still being used in a lot of places. Not only being used in formations like this within the Cursed Realm, but she is probably the strongest carry. And again, between her and Lucius, but one of the absolute strongest carries when it comes to the carry within the Lightbearer Tower itself. Again, that makes a big difference in there. Who's a higher priority for campaign, Iran or Athalia? I use Athalia. I do use Athalia. Should I swap Brutus for Randy? If it's a basic Brutus, yes. Brutus, again, if it's Brutus for Rendell, you're talking, a Mauler for a Graveborn. Brutus only needs one copy. If you're going really, really old school Brutus, I would swap for Rendell. And if you're a new player, I would swap if you had the ability to get Randy built out versus not having it built out. Absolutely, I would, which is crazy. Yeah, Graveborns only have 2 awakened. No, we have Thoran, we have Shamira, and we have Baden. We have 3. We have 3. Again, we're going into the 4th iteration. So we have the awakened version of Baden, we have the awakened version of Shamira, and we have the awakened version of Thoran. Yeah, Jiggis, we do have 3 Graveborns that are awakened. And like I said, even thinking of 2025, guys, forward thinking, you got to remember this. Lightbearers, Maulers, Wilders, and Graveborns are all getting another awakened hero in 2025. Oh, I forgot Thoran. There you go. All 4 of these factions are getting another awakened hero in 2025. So it could even be, and I don't know, that you swap a Brutus away, all of a sudden, new awakened hero drops for the Mauler faction. All of a sudden, boom, tower progression is super easy in there. And overall, again, could be super easy in there if we do get another awakened Mauler pretty soon. And also depending what it is. If we get an awakened Mauler, that is like Entendre, that is very niche within formations, not seeing a lot of gameplay in a bunch of different places, might not be as super beneficial. But when we look at Brutus, again, tower progression, Brutus is a monster, is an absolute monster when it comes to tower progression, when it comes to formations within the Mauler Tower is huge. Yeah, a lot of people forget about Thoran. This is one, again, requires a plus 40 signature item to be super effective. A lot of players chose not to build him. Again, if you're looking at Treasure Scramble, pretty easy to replace in there. Kind of a one-off in a couple other formations. But also remember, who can you borrow? What's up, JC Gamer? Always remember, who can you borrow? That is another really big one where if I'm borrowing a hero short-term, let's say, for instance, I do not have, again, just the awakened version of Thoran. I can go ahead, I can merc a copy of the awakened version of Thoran for utilization within the Nightmare Corridor and the curse, or the Nightmare Corridor and the Cursed Realm. I can merc a copy. And like I said earlier, right here, guys, I merc copies every single week from different players to be able to use them in different game modes. So I'm not falling behind because I'm not building the hero, because we are getting and we're utilizing the merked heroes again on a regular basis every single week to build them up a little bit further, because I don't have the ability to build them up myself. I need to get them. Where do you think Vilfire sits in a Draconic Priorn? Will Scion be better? Yes, Scion's not going anywhere. when you look at the new hero, you can't really do a fair comparison on there. Just for the simple fact that Scion is a very, very heavy damage dealer. When you look at the new one we got, it's support. So again, you can't really put him in the same classification. It kind of falls in damage dealers, support. Again, you can't really put them in. Will Scion still be better? Damage-wise, Scion is very broken when it comes to damage-wise. The new Draconic support hero, we have to see exactly where it's going to be used. What do you think the new 4 faction Awakened heroes are going to be? I hope the 4 faction stay to the heroes. Again, thinking about the heroes that we have in here that we would like to see. Knowing that we had Thane, knowing we had Lucius, knowing we had Belinda, I don't think they would do Gwen just because we have the Draconic version of Gwen. I could see them doing something like a Strilda, or even doing something maybe like a Rain. We could possibly see either of those within the Lightbearer faction. I don't feel like Walker. They might do a Morrow, but I think when it comes to like Rigby and Walker and a couple other ones, I don't think they would redo just because, again, they were not super popular. Even looking in here like Inoki, Warwick, I would love to see Namisu. That would be pretty cool. So I don't think they're really going that far back in the old school ones. We know we did Sophia, we did Brutus, we did a couple other ones. Even in here, I would like to see Tassie, which is very similar to what they just did with Envy. I would love to see Almas. I would love to see a tank tree that actually has a lot of viability. Yeah, Crescio could be there. Also Satrana, because they did Entendre. And these two were kind of like peanut butter and jelly. They went together for a significant amount of time. We could see an Awakened version that is like a support Satrana, which would be, again, pretty interesting. In here, I know a lot of players always go in with Isabella. I would love to see a Wicked built out Pharrell. That would be very, very cool to see him built out in the entirety, be an Awakened version of Pharrell. But overall, some of the other heroes like Nara would be, again, pretty cool to see. But I would love Isabella and Pharrell to be built out. Nara would be cool if she was, a pretty Wicked build on there with a much, much larger axe, which, again, would be very cool to see. All right, guys, so let me make sure. I almost forgot doing the membership gifting. I love doing this every single time. I wanted to make sure we do not forget our membership gifting, so that should pop up in just a minute. That way we have more members, and you're seeing all of those little hippos. The Cow Official Gaming did join us as well. Thank you for being a member, and that one goes out to Dawn01. Congratulations becoming a member of the channel. Very, very cool to see. I still have around 800 time emblems. I don't know which Awakened hero to summon. I have Thoran, Iran, Zora. If you only have Thoran, Iran, and Zora, get Athalia. Get Athalia in there, Peter. If you do not have them, I would definitely, if you only have Thoran, Iran, and Zora, I would get Athalia. This one, super, super strong. Or Envy. Envy would be the other one. And honestly, knowing that Envy is a brand new one, this would probably be the one that I would build out just, again, knowing it's a brand new hero to AFK Arena. The utility for the hero is through the roof in every game mode, and you figure staying power, combat power, power creep, Athalia is going to be a lot more susceptible to the power creep, just being an older hero that we have right now, versus Envy being a brand new hero. Absolutely could do it, and could do it incredibly well. Oh, Silas would be pretty cool if they wanted to do something around a healer as a support hero. Silas would be a pretty cool one. So would Oden. I think Oden, they could do Oden very, very well if they wanted to. You can't swap Eugene for Envy. Unfortunately, that is a no-go. Yeah, Awaken Zolrath. There we go. That would be kind of crazy. But all right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's live stream. Thank you guys for joining me. I know we were a little bit late, a couple hours late and off time on the regular live stream. Next week, we'll definitely be back, and we have a lot more that is coming, a lot more around the 6th anniversary, and I'm waiting for codes. I have not seen any codes, anything to share with you right now as far as codes. I'm super sad to see that we haven't seen any AFK codes. I know I've seen some over on Journey, but we haven't seen anything here. Especially, imagine, yeah, the Awakened version of Yukio. That would be kind of crazy to see as well. Hi, Hippo in chat. What's going on, Gildo? Trade Awaken Iran or Thoran. I personally would choose Iran. out of those two, as much as and as many players do like Thoran, I do like Iran, and I do like having the awakened version of Iran. I do like it. Should I exchange Entendre for Thoran? That is a little bit tougher one because Entendre is still being used in a couple niche places. You could swap, but I don't know what else you do have in the Mauler Tower to really support in there. But that is it, guys. That is going to do it for the stream. We have a lot more that is coming. Yeah, put Yukio in the background. Yukio, oh, I could put Yukio in there. We do have Yukio. We do have all of them built out, and I know Yukio, a lot of players are still kind of looking. Yeah, Awaken Iran. I do like Awaken Iran. Very, very cool. But we're going to end on Yukio. So there is the shot of the only pay-to-win hero that you could get if you bought him in no other way. So again, that's going to do it for today's live stream. Thank you guys for joining me. And as always, thank you guys for watching.